My name is Lori Power, and I'm a group benefit consultant. And part of my give back to the clients to which I serve is to talk to people who are experts in their field on how we can grow and develop our businesses to ongoing success. So I'm really pleased to have Jason Vance from BubbleUp joining me today to talk all things marketing. Give us a little bit of background on you, Jason.
I started in the IT industry, probably close to 25 years ago now. And then I was about 15 years in, I shifted over to marketing kind of partway through my IT company, sold my interest in that company. And then right around 2011, I bought, I think, about 6 companies in 6 months to form BubbleUp. And so that was insane. And so I've been doing that ever since. So we're a team of about 21 staff or so right now, and we do all types of marketing. So,
question for those of us not in the field, though, what really is the difference between marketing and sales?
Marketing in general, I would say very general, marketing would create interest and inquiries, right? So you're trying to get the word out so that more people know about you and then are interested in hearing more from you. And then sales, like once let's say that lead or that inquiry comes in, sales usually takes over, and there should be a process in place to help qualify that individual. Are they a good fit for our company, and move them through the sales process to eventually become a client. So there are marketing parts, or maybe communication parts might be a better way to put it, in the sales process, like maybe language use and whatnot. But in general, the marketing part is to help generate interest and bring more people to talk to.
How does social media work into that?
Social media would be more on the awareness side and engagement. Now, there are certainly leads generated through social media, and there can be, but oftentimes you're trying to generate likes, follows, engagement to develop your brand and kind of the people that know, like, and trust you, right? And so you have a better chance. You're not just broadcasting the message through a billboard. There's more of a two-way dialogue on social media, or there should be, where the customer or the prospective customer can interact with you a little bit more and get to know you or your brand before, jumping in and becoming a client or a customer.
So when you're first starting to work with somebody who's interested in, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe they're like me and everything else fails, they realize they cannot do it on their own. And so now they're bringing the whole jumble to you and say, fix me.
Right.
Where do you start?
Well, we start with a strategy. And I think we didn't used to do that. It's probably about a 2-year-old piece that we've added into our process. And it's really because there is so much noise right now in the marketing space that most business owners, when they come to us, they've heard from their sister's brother-in-law that thinks they should be doing TikTok video, and they heard that they saw the Wix commercial and that websites are really easy to make on their own. And, they heard that SEO is like awesome and they need to do something. They're hearing all of this anecdotal ad hoc pieces all over the place, and they don't know what should they apply to their business in their industry that's going to suit their personality, that is going to meet their business objectives, because each company and business owner personally is different and might require a slightly different strategy or approach. And so I look at us like kind of we have a big tool wall behind us with all of these different marketing tools. And our customers come in and say, okay, here's what I want to accomplish with my business. Here's my dream. Here's what I want to get to. And then we help select a couple of tools off the wall and say, okay, these tools will help you build that dream. And that's really what we help through that strategy process. So we start with that, and then it moves into tactics beyond that.
Because they have an idea of what's going to be their return on investment. How often is that then tweaked once they start the process?
As far as, the tactical plan?
Yeah.
Constantly.
Okay.
Because I would say even 20, let's say 30 years ago in marketing, very often it was, that I'll call it the Mad Men style. You've got a marketing agency sitting in a boardroom trying to think of a clever campaign, pour some money into it, go to traditional media, TV, radio, billboards, whatever, and try to broadcast the message out so that more people get to see it, hear it, and then hopefully that'll generate some interest. But the return on investment was very difficult and still is in a lot of traditional media. You can't quite figure out what happened. And it's kind of like this big buildup, and then like, did it work? I don't know. Let's see, right? We just blew 100 grand. Is it okay? And that's today's marketing is very, very different. I'm not writing a direct mail piece and sending it to print for 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 copies and dropping them out. If I have a slight variation or I see a spelling mistake on the social media post, I can correct it immediately, right? And so you can change your approach, and you get access to real-time analytics and stats all the time. So as you're moving through your marketing, you're always measuring, and there's this big circle of things that are going on. You're planning, you're measuring, you're executing, measuring again, try something different, and just continue that process.
How do you track and measure those things? It seems so intangible.
Well, and it is, because marketers love to tell themselves stories that make them feel better about themselves. So we tell stories like, oh, your cost per click went down, or your click-through ratio, or we got 1 million impressions, and it sounds really big, like 30,000 cars drive by that sign every day, and they're going to see your marketing message, right? My personal philosophy is a lot of that stuff is BS. It helps us sell more marketing services. Okay. Really, at the end of the day, what matters to business owners, my customers, is like, how many phone calls did I get? How many leads did I get through my website? Where are people talking to me? What avenue are they talking to me from? And how can I increase the volume on that tactic? Like if they're talking to me through Facebook and I'm getting more business through Facebook, how do we amplify that channel to get more out of the channel? And so we use a dashboard that we set up for each one of our clients where they can see the exact same thing that we see. Of course, we have our metrics. I'll call them lead indicators, leading to hopefully the success of a lead at the end. But if you're familiar with 40X language, like lead versus lag measurements, right? So your lead indicator might be an increase in rankings through the search engine. Well, what does that mean? Usually that means there's more people coming to your website. What does that mean? Well, if they're qualified, that's probably means you're going to get more, qualified visitors and eventually more leads. So there's a multi-step process to get to the point where somebody is actually picking up the phone and calling. And so we give them that dashboard so they can track it all the time.
And what are lag indicators then?
Well, the lag indicators, there's a couple of different ones, but really it's like phone calls, form fills, or perhaps a lag indicator might be a specific behavior sequence that we want prospects to perform. So a good example might be an e-commerce checkout, right? And you can either choose to create an account or check account as a guest. And we might want to know if somebody checks out and creates an account and they don't make it all the way through the multi-step form to fully create an account, and then they end up either leaving the site or whatever, what's the problem? So we might create a lag indicator that allows us to pinpoint a specific trigger within that checkout sequence where people are getting tripped up. A good example was on an e-commerce website where I think it was it had a state field or a region or something like that. And people were tripped up. They didn't understand the verbiage, like, what am I supposed to put in this area? And we changed it to something else. And then all of a sudden people started going through the checkout sequence. So,
oh, I see. Okay. So you're tracking what is tripping people up, so to speak, on the process of trying to work
right.
with the company. Where does a website fit into the marketing strategy? Is that like the first go-to on initiating that strategy? What is, because sometimes I think of a website as almost like your resume now. It's like your digital resume. Who am I? And we have a tendency that sometimes I think to vomit all over our website with yelling at people on how amazing we are, and at what do you carve back, what do you leave in? I know this is a multi-level
Yeah.
question to ask, but these are things are brimming over.
In most industries, so your website is kind of like your home. Okay, it's your home, it's your nucleus, it's what you're bringing people to learn about your brand, uncover your value proposition, learn about your different services, and you have a chance to educate your customer through your website, right? And so it's kind of like your home base. And sometimes I refer to it as a lake, and you've got many rivers coming into the lake, right? So you've got rivers from social media, they're trickling into the home base. You've got rivers from search engines, you've got direct mail or other components that are trickling into where people will find you and have the most comprehensive view of your brand. But very often Google, especially now, in most industries, people are looking or asking Google for questions, especially in Alexa, Siri, like all of these devices that we can ask questions to right now, like where can I get the best socks in Edmonton or something? So I ask these questions, and Google's classifying or recognizing those questions and then serving up search results. So your website can be used to educate your customers to help bring them in when they're asking those kind of questions. And so that's where blogging or content marketing come in play, where you're answering the questions that are being asked in the marketplace, and Google says, hey, this is a great hub of information. I'm going to send more people to this website or to this post, to learn more about what people are looking for.
Is that essentially what you would call then search engine optimization, because you are playing to the analytics? Am I correct in thinking that?
It's part of, yes. SEO is a really big field, but content marketing or leveraging that research and then matching the research with the answer, on the website. Very often that can yield results, and it's certainly an aspect of SEO, definitely.
I constantly trip up in thinking about analytics, because it seems as soon as I open Google, we could all probably put in the same query and it's going to come up with something different for each of us based on what we are used to searching. How does that, when we're trying to get our messages out in marketing, how does that trip up getting the customer to come to us?
Really that comes down to knowing what Google interprets when you put something into that search bar. So if I'm looking for pizza, chances are I'm not looking to order in Chicago, right? It'll automatically serve up results saying, hey, this is probably a regionalized term. This person wants to order pizza somewhere in their vicinity, right? If I research tube TVs, right? They might think, okay, that's weird, right? Like there's no store that really sells that anymore. What's this person doing? Maybe this person's writing a research paper, or they're trying to find historical. We're going to show them Wikipedia. We're going to show them a smattering of stuff, from YouTube videos to whatever about tube TVs, because we're just not sure what they want, right? And so when I'm logged into my Gmail account, let's say, Google also is recording everything pretty much that I'm doing. And so it recognizes my interests, knowing that, okay, I'm going to serve up something that's a little bit more what Jason would typically click on compared to what Lori would click on, right? And it's Google is doing that on a more dynamic basis all the time.
I like to think that marketing has perhaps changed, most especially in the last 18, 19 months. Can you take me through how you have changed your approach, perhaps as a marketing company, to accommodate the shift that's happened?
The fundamentals that we've always preached haven't really changed. Probably the biggest growth trend, if you will, in the last 18 months has been e-commerce. It's where there's probably two pieces. One, storytelling through social media for brands to do, and e-commerce. E-commerce because people are they're kind of either trapped at home or they are less inclined to go out to grab the stuff they want to. They'd rather just have it shipped to their house or go, door to door and pick it up. And so that aspect has changed significantly. And so we've done a lot of work in e-commerce, and it's not an easy thing. People walk in thinking, oh, I'm just going to start an e-commerce site today. There's actually a little bit more to it than that. But and then really the storytelling part of it, I see, especially early, like 18 months ago, I saw more community, like Facebook groups popping up, like let's support locals, support our community. And those things just thrived. And then you look at some of the brands that actually tell really good stories. And it could be around certain events, but they're obviously engaged in their community. They're doing unique things. They're not necessarily a franchise. They're one-off, like, and I'll throw out some brands that I've just stumbled across, like Hubtown Brewing in Okotoks has a great Facebook page. I stumbled across them this summer. They're not a client of mine. And it's just, I really like what they're doing in that community. And it's obvious the community is responding and they're busy like crazy, or Will Hawk Jerky out in Spruce Grove. Again, this isn't one of my clients. Their social media has exploded because they've told stories about the community, about personality. They've been authentic in their approach, and they're not just like buy our stuff, right? And the community has really responded and rallied around them and will be there. Like, they have rabid fans on Facebook that will come to bat for their brand. And anytime they launch something, they're going to do really well at selling it.
So that leads me to say, though, is that a marketing strategy, or is that social media engagement?
Some of it simply comes down to the personality of the business owner, right? So those two examples, the owners are like a husband and wife team, and in both cases, I believe it's the wife that is just amazing, excellent writers, great community engagements, and that's what causes that authenticity, and people are drawn to it, right? And then there's people like me that I can't do any of that stuff, and you'd have to force me to try to do some of that on social media, and therefore I don't have the same, right? I'll use something else as a tactic or a strategy. So I think it's less in those cases, it's less about some marketer that said, oh, what would be great, do this. I think part of the marketing piece is finding what works that meets, especially in a small business, meets the personality of the business and what they're really naturally gifted at and where they naturally will lend themselves. If cause marketing and community engagement and sponsoring Timbits hockey or something like that is where the passion play of the business owner is, then you're going to get results out of that. And if we can help advise and develop some strategies to augment or amplify the message that is already naturally there, then fantastic. They're going to get even more results, right? Instead of trying to take them down a path that is totally against everything. If I take, my grandma and say, you're now on Twitter, go grandma, she's going to struggle, right? It's just not really within her wheelhouse.
I like that. I like the way that you outlined that. So then I'm going to ask you, I got you all fired up now. So I'm going to ask, what is the one question you hate that you wish people would just stop asking because the answers are there, but they're somehow not seeing it? What's that one question?
I don't really run across many that I don't like, because I love just my personality. I love answering the questions. And so I like talking with people because it means that they're engaged and they want to learn a little bit more about my craft, and they trust me enough to answer the question, right? So even if, I've answered the same stuff about SEO, like, isn't it, don't you just pay Google a little bit more and then you can rank higher? Like, that's a typical question that I get a lot through the years. And no, that's not true. That's a totally different thing, but then I can open up that and explain it a little bit. Probably the area that most recently has quite a bit of, it's most difficult for me to answer, I would say, is when clients are looking to hire a marketing person. That's probably one where you don't want to come across as, well, like, don't hire somebody, hire an agency like me, like, woo, right? And it's like, no. Let's talk about why you want to hire somebody. And then let's talk about why you might want to hire an agency, because there's a different outcome between those two, that decision that you're about to make, right? So that's probably where I get most tripped up, or just wanting to explain to people, sometimes overly explain.
Well, and that leads us into, is that the question that you would like people to ask that they're perhaps not asking? Something where, as business owners, what is that question that we should be asking before we start to consider our marketing journey?
Some of it comes to, okay, that strategy that we talked about, what should I actually be doing? And then when it comes to hiring or picking even a staff person, even within your organization, to delegate the marketing to, what truly is their role? Like, I've seen so many receptionists or executive assistants that are saddled with social media. Well, how do you know that's their strength? Just because they sit at a desk and answer the phone and deal with, logistics of the office, doesn't necessarily mean they're a storyteller that's going to engage the social media audience, right? So same thing with bringing on like a marketing person. Some clients that I work with, they're on the cusp of like, okay, Jason, should I hire somebody in-house to just kind of take care of all of these things? I want to check the box, right? Well, there's a reason why there's specialties in SEO, social media, online advertising, media planning, PR, right? Like, all of these are different disciplines within the marketing space. You can't hire one person and expect them to perform equally across all of them. What you likely need, and this is what I tell my clients, is if you're going to go down the path and hire somebody, make sure they are highly organized, they have a strategic mind in general, and they will help project manage the vendors that you choose to bring in your marketing, right? Because that's going to have the best bang for the buck. And they'll have, maybe they're a good at graphic design, so you can have that graphic design box checked off in-house, but those other skills are extremely important, because otherwise they're just learning on your dime. You're paying them 4, 5, 6,000 a month to sit there and learn. You told them, go rank me higher in Google, so they got to sit there and learn SEO for 3 months, when you could have gone to a vendor that does that all day and had way better return on time.
I like that. I think that's great advice, to have somebody who is more that organizer, almost like when you're building a home. You have your contractor who's taking care of all your subcontractors to get the job done and move it on to fruition.
And I will say, I totally agree with when people are authentic. Like, we have a community that we are very involved in, we love, and we can definitely see and support those businesses where they thrive in it because it's their true self, and it's like they believe in the community, versus things that are maybe planted and seem like a great opportunity, but they're not involved in the community and it's more of just business. Like, you can really see the difference. At least we can. We're a tight community here. So
when you are engaging as a company, you definitely have reached a pulse. You know your audience, and you perform to that audience's expectation. And see, that's where it gets confusing in my head. Jason is always trying to keep that social media part of that marketing strategy, but it is just a small piece of it.
There's a lot to social media, and I'll be honest, I have staff that are way better at this area than I am. They're way more plugged in, and it doesn't come naturally to me. Networking in general doesn't come naturally to me. I have to really work at it, struggle with it. And so, social media, where I see people being authentic, we use, if they're not that authentic, if they're just kind of posting to post, then what we try to do is augment that or amplify their message with advertising to try to bring more people and expose more people to the brand on that platform. And each platform is getting a little bit better and more mature as time goes on. Like, Twitter is getting better. Even a year ago, they didn't really have a very good ad platform. It was abysmal. So anybody that was really passionate about on Twitter, or that's where they wanted to be, you couldn't really help them through further messaging on ad campaigns. But it's getting better. Whereas Facebook and Instagram, they've matured quite a bit in the last 5 years, obviously. And even TikTok, Snapchat, those ones, they don't have great platforms other than organic, like to be found if you're just passionate about the platform.
Do you think that there will be any effect from Bill C-10 on marketing for some businesses on social media? That's the taking over, it's the Broadcasting Act. So government taking over what's being broadcast and the content on social media.
I get a little concerned about that, definitely. I don't like it. The CRTC in general bothers me, but I mean, whenever it comes to the government setting what can and can't be said on online platforms, that is a challenge, right? Because it all depends on which government is in power.
For sure.
Right? When you've got the law in place, now it just depends on who is applying the law and through what lens, right? And so that's the challenge with that particular bill, for sure. I've read a little bit, but I'm not an expert, for sure.
Where can it be deemed to be bias in some nature as well? And that one isn't passed yet, but that will certainly impact our social media, because if we forward or put out an article that we deem to be interesting, and then that article is deemed to be inappropriate.
Yeah,
By
it opens up a whole can of worms as far as we currently have, as a society, access to almost every piece of information and viewpoint imaginable. So, and Facebook and other, entities are very good at creating a bubble through which we can, almost like an echo chamber, we can hear our own thoughts and viewpoints and not necessarily get challenged all the time. So I feel like limiting certain points of view, again, who interprets which point of view I should hear and what I shouldn't hear. I would rather encourage critical thought and collecting information from a wide range of sources and filtering through to make my own assessment, rather than being fed a very narrow viewpoint and that's all you're allowed to see or hear because that is the approved message. Granted, there's a lot of quacks out there that have some pretty crazy ideas, but if we want free speech, that's kind of where, we need to be able to personally filter that out, not have somebody else filter that out for us.
As a last topic, where do you see marketing going in the next few years?
It's already here, but I would say something called machine learning or artificial intelligence is probably too far out there, but I would say machine learning and marketing automation is a term that's being used, and it has been used for a number of years, but it gets it's more in use at the enterprise level. It hasn't trickled down because it can get quite labor intensive. It hasn't trickled down to the small companies yet, because if you think about segmenting out your audience and telling them something different, if you have 10,000 customers or 100,000 customers, you might be able to segment them into groups and form specific messages for each one. But that's probably where the biggest piece is, I would say, is and to couple that with e-commerce, the continued growth of e-commerce. My wife was telling me the other day, she's like, these guys' marketing is certainly on point. I had this in my cart, 2 weeks ago, and they're sending me an email. They obviously knew it was me. I wasn't signed in, but they saw the fact that my IP address or something triggered the fact that I, as a guest on their website, had that in my cart. And now they're coming to me saying, hey, it's still here. 3 other people have bought it and there's one left. So
that's really interesting. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming in today. That's I have a little bit more clarity, but I have a tendency to jumble these things up in my mind between what is marketing, what is sales, what is social media. And I think you have helped put some clarity into that. So that's the bubbling up of information, I guess.
Thanks, Larry.